I've always liked challenges and I've always liked climbing things. I actually once walked out of a classroom in MIT that I was studying some math class in just to climb the highest tree in the courtyard. And maybe that's a good metaphor of exploring every branch, because one of the things that I wanted to do as I was climbing up that tree in the courtyard instead of going to class was to explore every single branch of that tree. Actually, in linguistics, we use trees a lot as a representation of human language. We often represent the relations between phrases and clauses in a sentence as trees. So who knows, maybe that latent interest I had in the structure of branching and ramification in trees was already somehow related to this interest in structures and in growth and in exploring every branch. I think the key characteristics for people who love research may differ to a certain extent with everyone's personality, but I would say that being very detail-oriented and really being thorough with all reading on a particular topic is the key. I know that in this day and age we have so many high-level executive summaries available in resources online, but I think going to the primary literature and reading very thoroughly everything that you can on a particular topic has been key. When I try to work on a new topic, I try to read as thoroughly as I can everything that's been written on that particular topic. I think that one of the other aspects of successful research that I might draw on from my personality outside of linguistics is one of my great hobbies, which is rock climbing. And I guess the idea there that I can find applicable in both domains, even though they seem very different, is that these long ascents and these very long journeys require individual attention at each step and each move of the way, that these very long ascents still, one cannot lose the emphasis on each local movement, on each local individual focus. And so when we're doing research, when we're doing a project that seems very ambitious, and how could I contribute to this large edifice of linguistic theory, again, the key might be to successfully isolate and accomplish each individual move to your best ability, each step of that research journey. Each small experiment contributes in a way that we may never know until many years in the future. So sometimes it's hard to know what is the impact of my work, and sometimes we'll never know until we know that it all collectively scientifically adds to this larger enterprise. One of the other keys that has been crucial for me in my success so far in the language sciences has been partnerships with other people. And I would say that, again, perhaps this is related to rock climbing with the importance of dependence on your partner, both to save your life and for you to save their own life. And in this day and age, with the great interdisciplinarity of scientific partnerships, where different types of expertise are required with different technologies, with different types of language backgrounds, and even with sometimes people who are more detail-oriented and others who see the big picture, as in with all teams, I think that that's been fundamental to research in the language sciences. The idea of a lone scholar is perhaps not as predominant anymore as it used to be in the humanities. There's so much information out there that we cannot rely on having it all, and linguistics and language sciences is so interdisciplinary that we might put together a team of some people who are better at the quantitative side, some people who are experts on the language side, some people who can think more about the experimental design, and particularly as we use experimental techniques from a variety of new technologies, teamwork and a willingness to work together with others and a willingness to celebrate the strengths of others on our team is crucial to success in research. And some of my research efforts and research articles have involved having a paper that is co-authored with 14 different people, which some of the research journals say, we can't fit all these names on a page. And I say, well, you're going to have to figure it out, because that's the way that science is being done these days. There are a number of ways that academia can rethink the kinds of outputs, for example, that are being produced, such that, for example, there's a very high premium placed on research articles in journals. But that may not be the most beneficial kind of output to members of language communities. There is great value, for example, in developing a coloring book with words in an underrepresented language. What is a minoritized language, after all? One of the definitions of a minoritized language that my son, who was 10 years old at the time, said is, this is a language that we don't see very many street signs in. An underrepresented or marginalized language might be one that we don't see so many written materials in. And to that end, producing for the needs of communities, for the needs of younger people who, as we've mentioned, are the lifeblood and vitality of languages, educational resources like coloring books, playful materials in certain underrepresented or marginalized languages can be a contribution of linguists. I believe that in the language sciences, one of the crises that's being faced is with respect to this question of narrowness or lack of inclusivity that's part of academia more generally. And I think in a field like linguistics, it's particularly relevant that the more people that are native speakers of diverse languages that are participating in the field, the richer our scientific sources will be. Because being the native speaker of a language has gifts that a second hand or second learner, as we've talked about, may never fully learn. That increased inclusion of native speakers coming from a variety of backgrounds as specialists in the language sciences can only benefit the health of the field, and I believe that some of these crises that may be on the horizon can be averted with greater look at practices of inclusivity and equity in academia more generally. Anytime you hear that a particular linguistic variety might be lesser or not have a grammar or might have no rules or a particular set of speakers speak in a lazy way, it's an opportunity to re-examine why has the language taken that choice? What are the actual properties of that language? What is the way that that language is used in that community? What are the patterns? And what is a possible and impossible way to speak or to articulate in that language? Every language has possible and impossible structures. To study a language, it's not just what we record on a camera or find in a book, but we can actually construct ungrammatical or impossible sentences in that language, and speakers will have intuitions. That every language has a system of rules or patterns in which certain kinds of structures are impossible. Now, those rules might not be explicit, those rules might not be written down, but they're implicit in the minds of speakers. And one of our goals as language scientists is to figure out what are the hidden and implicit rules that make some patterns possible and some patterns impossible, even in languages that might not have a grammar that's written down in a formal way. All of these are manifestations of the human mind. All of these are manifestation of children that build their own grammatical system. Children as learners are the ones who develop grammars. And every grammar has a set of patterns and rules that, although they may be implicit, determine what are the preferred and possible versus impossible sentences and words within that language. So the language sciences can contribute many kinds of potential positive impact for the world in the development of increasing number of tools for the documentation of endangered languages, and also for the development of these kind of adaptive technologies. For example, even in the case of sign languages, what are called avatars. Avatars are these robot or animated figures that can do automatic production of sign language in real time given a text. And this is important as, for example, right now only about 5% of children that are deaf have parents who are also deaf. So from that perspective, tools that can be developed by linguists in order to produce in real time sign language-like avatars, the equivalent of automatic translation, except this time with moving figures, is of great value, again, to the accessibility of language adaptive tools to greater range of communities. There are certain kinds of brain damage called aphasia that can lead to an inability to have fluent running speech. And one of the resources that's in place for individuals who have difficulty with fluent running speech as a result of these kinds of unfortunate brain damage are these visual languages. And there's a visual language known as Bliss, which was originally developed as an effort for intercultural communication, much like Esperanto as I'd been talking about earlier. But it was incidentally discovered that the use of this visual language for a group of children with cerebral palsy was a way for them to produce a communication system that did not require the use of written language in a phonemic or alphabetic basis.
Very good.
Okay, she has... Look at what this Carrie's making her mom do.
We had the opportunity to work with a philosopher in London who had suffered brain damage and no longer had the ability to have fluent running speech, but nonetheless developed this, what I would call ingenious written communication system, which was loosely inspired by Bliss and ideographic systems like the Chinese written system or even hieroglyphics for that matter, as a way of still communicating his inner thoughts on paper to others without using the traditional channels of alphabetic writing systems. So these days, the focus on linguistics and the language sciences is again very much integrated with neuroscience, with computer science, with artificial intelligence, and with philosophy. And indeed, there is such a great integration with both the fields of technology and with endangered languages that those have also become important emphases of the language sciences. How can we apply our advances in the language sciences to technological applications that, for example, made it possible for Stephen Hawking to communicate? Stephen Hawking was able to communicate because of predictive technologies that after each word he chose would already suggest a set of candidates that were more likely to be the next word. And so those adaptive technologies, together with improved statistical models, with improved integration of linguistics and language sciences with mathematics and statistics, allowed predictive technologies to suggest upcoming words in a more efficient and user-friendly way for people who need adaptive technologies to have the same rich set of communicative interactions that we all deserve as humans. There's still so much we don't know about the world, and there are so many opportunities for individual contributions in so many regions of the world and with so many populations using the power of a greater understanding of the nature of human language, whether it be working in very small remote communities, whether it be working with historically oppressed communities who need a greater understanding of their language, or whether it be working with individuals with communicative challenges through which adaptive linguistics can bring a voice. It's my hope that by seeing that language has both biological and social and cultural components, you can contribute to its many future applications to technology, society, and human dignity.
Thank you for watching this episode of First Lecture. If you like this video, hit subscribe for more awesome content. See you on the next journey.